Why do so many of us, even when we know what we should say, choose to remain silent? Why is it so common to feel a surge of conviction, only to swallow it to avoid a difficult conversation? We tell ourselves it is about keeping the peace, being the bigger person, or that it is just not worth the fight. But this explanation is incomplete. According to the 19th century philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, this instinct for peace is not a virtue. It is a neurological and psychological trap, a biological battle fought inside your mind between your desire for an easy life and your drive for an authentic one. And in this silent battle for your soul, the instinct for comfort almost always wins. This is not a metaphor. It is a philosophical diagnosis. Every time you choose strategic silence over your own truth, you are not keeping the peace. You are starting a war within yourself. You are building a prison of resentment and anxiety, bar by bar. Your brain, much like it is wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain, is optimized to keep you socially safe in the short term. The problem is that this brain, operating on its ancient software, has become an internal saboteur of your own freedom. In this video, we are going to take a deep dive into the workings of this self-betrayal and understand why we avoid conflict, even when we know we need it. We will explore the philosophy of conflict avoidance and its corrosive effects. And above all, we will discover how to hack this system, not with heroic willpower, but with strategic intelligence. Because if you keep fighting against your own instincts for comfort, you will lose. But if you learn to redesign the battlefield, you can finally stop building your own prison. This pattern of self-sabotage shows up in predictable ways. Consider the family dinner. A relative makes a comment that violates one of your core values. Your mind instantly generates a dozen articulate responses. But then you pause. You scan the room. You feel the fragile social harmony, and you run a calculation. You decide it is better to let it go. You have successfully kept the peace. Or think about a meeting at work. A colleague proposes a flawed or inefficient idea. You have the data and the experience to correct the course. But speaking up would mean rocking the boat, inviting debate, and creating friction. So you stay quiet. You tell yourself you have been a team player. In a relationship, your partner does something that hurts you, not with malice, just carelessness. You want to express it, but you fear the emotional effort that would follow. You fear being labeled too sensitive. So you swallow the hurt and say, "It is fine." You have chosen harmony over honesty. In each scenario, the logic is identical. We trade truth for a feeling of tranquility. We sacrifice authenticity for social comfort. The most common answer is that we are being mature or pragmatic. We believe we are choosing a path of less resistance, and therefore, less suffering. But this explanation is deeply wrong. The peace you purchase with silence is not real. It is a fragile truce. The conflict does not disappear. It simply turns inward. The unspoken word, the undrawn boundary, the unexpressed hurt do not just vanish. They curdle. They begin to fester inside you, transforming from a momentary, external conflict into a slow, internal, corrosive poison. The battle you avoided with someone else becomes a permanent, unwinnable war against yourself. You may have won a moment of comfort, but you lost a piece of your integrity in the transaction. And that is a price that is far too high to pay. To understand the poison that brews from this avoided conflict, we must turn to Nietzsche, not as a historical figure, but as a ruthless diagnostician of the human psyche. He had a specific and powerful term for it, ressentiment. The word is French for resentment, but its philosophical meaning is far deeper. Ressentiment is not just anger. It is the impotent bitterness of those who feel powerless to act. It is the feeling that grows in the dungeon of your mind after you have locked the door on your own truth. Every time you swallow your words at that dinner, you are feeding this creature. Every time you nod along in a meeting against your better judgment, you are giving it strength. According to Nietzsche, In his work on the genealogy of morals, society often teaches us to relabel our weaknesses as virtues. Your fear of confrontation is rebranded as patience. Your inability to say no is called generosity. Your terror of being disliked is called kindness. You convince yourself that you are being good, when in reality, you are just being afraid. Think of it this way. A truly strong person, a noble spirit in Nietzsche's framework, acts. Their morality is active and affirming. But the person of ressentiment has a morality that is reactive. It starts with no. It looks at the assertive and the powerful and says, "What you are is evil." Then, it defines itself as good simply for being the opposite. This is the goodness of the lamb that decides the bird of prey is evil, simply because the bird eats lambs. The lamb has convinced itself its inability to fly is a moral choice. This is the psychological state that conflict avoidance creates. You start to secretly resent people who can speak up. You see someone voice a confident opinion and think, "How arrogant." You see a friend set a firm boundary and think, "How selfish." You are projecting your own frustrated power onto them to make your own weakness more bearable. And the cost of this is immense. Ressentiment manifests as modern anxiety, as passive aggression, as that constant, low-grade dissatisfaction with your life. It fragments your personality. There is the you present to the world, agreeable and peaceful, and the real you, screaming in a locked room in your mind, keeping a perfect record of every grievance and every self-betrayal. The prison of false peace now reveals its true nature. The bars are made of ressentiment. The warden is your own fear, and the sentence is a life haunted by the person you could have been. So if ressentiment is the poison, what is the antidote? For Nietzsche, it is his most famous and misunderstood concept, the will to power. Now, it is critical that we clear up the common and dangerous misinterpretation of this idea. The will to power is not a brutish desire to dominate and oppress others. That is a cartoon villain caricature. For Nietzsche, the will to power is a fundamental drive in all living things. It is the intrinsic urge to grow, expand, overcome resistance, and express one's force to its full potential. Think of a seed under the soil. It actively pushes against the weight of the earth to reach the light. That striving, that innate drive to overcome resistance and become what it is meant to be, is its will to power. The highest expression of this drive is not mastering others, but self-overcoming. It is the channeling of this fundamental drive inward to master your own impulses and transform your own suffering into strength. And here we arrive at the crucial turning point. When you avoid a necessary conflict, you are actively suppressing your will to power. You are telling that seed inside you not to grow. Each time you choose silence over authenticity, you are choosing stagnation. You are failing, not due to weakness, but out of obedience to an instinct that prioritizes comfort over growth. From a Nietzschean perspective, conflict is not a threat to your life. It is the gymnasium of your soul. It is the resistance required for growth. A muscle that is never stressed will atrophy. A spirit that is never challenged will become weak and fragile. The discomfort you feel before a confrontation, the racing heart, the knot in your stomach, is not a stop sign. It is a biological signal that you are at the edge of your current limits. It is an invitation to engage your will to power and expand. To embrace necessary conflict is to reclaim your agency. It is to shift from being a reactive creature, shaped by others, into an active creator of your own life. When you speak your truth in a difficult moment, you are overcoming your fear, your social programming, and the inertia of comfort. In that moment, you are exercising your will to power in its purest form. You are choosing to become. This is why true freedom, for Nietzsche, is not the absence of obstacles. It is the strength to overcome them. But there is a powerful counterargument here, a voice of reason that says this sounds exhausting and dangerous. Is not civilization itself built on the principle of avoiding conflict? To understand this perspective, we have to look at the work of philosopher Thomas Hobbes. For Hobbes, the natural state of humanity is a war of all against all. Life, he famously said, is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Why? Because the fundamental passion that governs humanity is the fear of a violent death. The most rational act, therefore, is to escape this state. We do this by forming a society. We willingly give up some of our individual freedoms to a powerful authority in exchange for security and order. From a Hobbesian perspective, avoiding conflict is not cowardice. It is the very foundation of civilization. When you stay silent at the dinner table, you are making a rational calculation to maintain social order and personal security. You are choosing a predictable peace over a chaotic and potentially dangerous fight. Here we see the two philosophies in their starkest contrast. For Hobbes, the goal is security, and fear is the rational guide. For Nietzsche, the goal is greatness, and that same fear is the very thing that domesticates us and stifles our potential. Hobbes wants to build walls to protect us from the storm. Nietzsche wants us to become strong enough to dance in it. The Hobbesian argument for safety is deeply wired into our brains and our social structures. But Nietzsche forces us to ask a terrifying question. What if the safety we buy comes at the cost of our own vitality, our own power, our own soul? What if the real danger is not the conflict we face, but the person we become by running away from it? And this is not just an old philosophical idea. It is echoed in some of the most important psychological work of the last century, providing a modern language for the struggle Nietzsche identified. First, consider the work of Carl Jung and his concept of the shadow. The shadow represents all the parts of ourselves that we repress and deny, including our unexpressed strengths like aggression, ambition, and righteous anger. When you consistently avoid conflict, you push your assertiveness deep into your shadow. But as Jung warned, what we resist persists. The more we suppress the shadow, the more it controls us from the background, erupting in unexpected rage, cynicism, or passive aggression. The path to wholeness, for Jung, involves a courageous confrontation with this shadow, integrating its power consciously. Next, look at Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl argues that the primary human drive is the search for meaning. As Nietzsche himself wrote, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow." Avoiding necessary conflict is often a choice to prioritize comfort over your why. It is a declaration that your convenience is more important than your convictions, which is a fast track to the existential vacuum Frankl described, a state of apathy and meaninglessness. Finally, consider the contemporary research of Brené Brown on vulnerability. Her work has scientifically demonstrated what Nietzsche knew intuitively. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is our best measure of courage. What is a necessary conflict if not a profound act of vulnerability? It is saying, "Here is my truth," without any guarantee of the outcome. Avoiding that conversation is the opposite. It is choosing comfort over courage. And a life defined by the pursuit of comfort is ultimately a small and unfulfilling one. From Jung's shadow to Frankl's meaning to Brown's courage, the message is the same. The path to a whole and meaningful life runs directly through the territory you are most afraid of. So, before we explore the practical steps, it is useful to perform a quick diagnosis. Think for a moment about your own life. What is the one truth you have been swallowing? What is the one conversation you know you need to have, but have been avoiding? Acknowledging the pattern is the first step to rewriting it. So how do we apply this? This is not about willpower. It is about strategic intelligence. It is about redesigning the battlefield. First, you must change your definition of conflict. We see conflict as a destructive force, a sign of failure. From now on, see necessary conflict as a tool for clarification. It is not about winning. It is about closing the gap between what is felt and what is said. When you challenge a bad idea at work, you are clarifying the path to success. When you tell a partner they hurt you, you are clarifying the boundaries of your relationship. See it not as an act of war, but as an act of courageous love for the truth, the relationship, and yourself. Next, you must start small. You would not try to bench press 400 pounds on your first day at the gym. You must build this muscle incrementally. Start with low-stakes disagreements. The next time a friend suggests a movie you do not want to see, instead of saying, "Sure, try. Actually, I am not in the mood for that. How about this instead?" The next time your order is wrong at a restaurant, politely point it out instead of just eating it. Each of these small acts is a single repetition, making you stronger and more comfortable with asserting your own reality. You must also distinguish necessary conflict from unnecessary conflict. This is not a license to argue about everything. The goal is not to seek conflict, but to stop running from it when it is necessary. Before engaging, ask yourself one question. If I stay silent here, will I betray a core value or erode my self-respect? Arguing with a stranger online probably will not cost you self-respect, but staying quiet when asked to do something unethical will linger for weeks. Let self-respect be your compass. If silence feels like a small act of self-abandonment, the conflict is necessary. When you decide to engage, you must embrace the discomfort. Your body's threat response will activate. Your heart will pound. Your mind will scream to abort. This is normal. The key is not to wait for the fear to go away. The key is to act with the fear. Reframe the physical sensations. The racing heart is not a sign of doom. It is your body giving you the energy to do something difficult. This is what Nietzsche meant by having chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. You have to endure the storm of your own discomfort to create something new on the other side. Finally, you must detach from the outcome. The moment you speak your truth in a necessary conflict, you have already won. The victory is not in convincing the other person or getting your way. The victory is in aligning your actions with your values. The victory is refusing to betray yourself. You might lose the argument. The other person might get angry, but you will walk away with your integrity intact. You will have won back a piece of your own soul. This entire process points toward an ultimate goal, a concept Nietzsche called the Übermensch, or the Overman. This is not a superhero. It is a symbol for what a human can become through a life of relentless self-overcoming. The Overman is the person who has liberated themselves from herd morality and has dared to create their own values. They are the artists who sculpt their own character from the raw material of life. The Overman does not seek happiness. They seek to discharge their strength. They do not run from suffering or conflict. They see it as a necessary part of existence and say yes to it all. This is the principle of amor fati, a love of one's fate. How does one walk this path? It begins with every single choice to face a necessary battle instead of running from it. The Overman is forged, piece by piece, in the thousands of small moments where you choose your truth over your comfort. Every time you set a boundary, every time you speak up, every time you choose an honest conversation over the false piece of silence, you are taking a step on that path. This journey is about becoming who you are. So let us recap. We started by identifying a core problem. Our brain's ancient programming for comfort and social safety causes us to avoid necessary conflict. We have seen how this leads to a psychological poison Nietzsche called ressentiment, an internal war that erodes our soul. But then we found the solution. Not more willpower, but a new strategy. By understanding conflict as a tool for clarification, by building our courage incrementally, and by focusing on authenticity instead of victory, we can reclaim our agency. We can use the will to power not to dominate others, but to overcome our own limitations. This is the blueprint for hacking our own psychology and building authentic freedom. The path to freedom is not a path of comfort. It is a path of courage. I leave you with a choice. Will you remain a prisoner of polite silence, obedient to your brain's outdated software? Or will you take the first step and begin to redesign the battlefield? If this message resonated with you, subscribe for more deep dives into the philosophy and psychology of a better life. Your freedom is waiting. Go and claim it.